All right. Well, good evening. This is we have had some stops and starts getting through this series, and had one week where we took a little detour to go through some things specifically dealing with the charismatic gifts, and so we wanted to come back to it. But here we are, finally to the last week, and so what we've done the last couple of lessons that we wanted to do is just going through the descriptions of the gifts. And so we're going to be tackling the last set of those here this evening. And let's see, did I give you one of you two my book? I think that I gave you mine. There we go. One of my notes in it.
Okay.
All right. Darn. and guess what? There is a test.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Darn it.
I'm an easy grader, though, just so you know, super easy.
As long as the question is not, do you know where your book is?
Do you know where your book is? Question number one.
Major
All right.
bills.
All right, so let's have a quick word of prayer and then we'll get going. Lord, thank you for your faithfulness to us. Thank you for giving to us gifts to aid us to do the work of the ministry. Lord, I pray that the study that we've done will be profitable for us, not only in our own personal lives, but in our church and in our community as we point people to Christ. We love you and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so as we've gone through already, we've already looked at some of the gifts that have been given to the church and to individuals. And by way of recap, because man had a need for salvation, God has given to the church the gift of evangelism. Because there's a need for discernment or awareness of sin, God has given to some the gift of prophecy. For some, because we have a need for doctrine, for knowledge, God has given to the church the gift of teaching. Because there's a need for wisdom and to know how to live the Christian life, God has given the gift of exhortation. The overseeing or coaching is the gift of shepherding. So those are the ones we've looked at already. If you go in your book to page number 155, page 155, we're going to look at the gift of mercy. Because the church has a need for comfort, God has given to some the gift of mercy. Now, all of these gifts are we've talked about before, are things that there are some individuals who have been given by God a special measure of this characteristic, its gift. However, all of them also are graces that can grow in our own life. Okay? You are not excused from showing mercy because you are not naturally a mercy giver. Okay? So I don't have to show mercy, that's not my gift. Right? No, we are supposed to grow in that grace. Okay? If excuse me, just because you don't have the gift of the evangelist doesn't mean that you have eliminated the need to be a witness for Jesus Christ. We are all to be witnesses for Christ, all of us.
That's why we're the church.
And so that's a grace we need to grow in. But there are some who are going to be more apt to that gift, to that need, because God has gifted them in it, in each of these gifts. All right? So tonight we're going to look at the mercy shower for a minute. There on page 155, in that second sentence, it says that people with this gift are comforters who enter into the grief or happiness of others. They actually have that ability to come alongside and weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. Whereas somebody who has, for example, the gift of prophecy is more likely to laugh at those who are in sorrow and mourn at those who are too happy. You know, it just seems like they have a hard time. And I've mentioned it before that.
Why is he so happy? What's wrong with
Yeah, you're happy. What's wrong with you, right? But I have a friend who's an evangelist who never does hospital visits because if you broke your leg and were in the hospital, he'd more likely walk in and say, "That's a stupid thing to do." You know, he does not have compassion as his primary gift. But his brother, who has the gift of mercy, will sit down next to the man and weep with him for a couple hours because God's gifted him differently. And now we all need to grow in the grace of the mercy showing We can't excuse bad behavior, but some people are more gifted than others because God has given it to them. All right, the show empathy goes beyond sympathy. Sympathy feels for others, empathy feels with others. They actually, when you're hurting, they hurt too. That's the mercy shower, okay? They emotionally go through what the victim goes through, all right? Mercy showers are those who seem to know what to say at the right time. Have you ever found yourself when someone's struggling and you say, man, I said the wrong thing? Well, chances are you probably are not a mercy shower, okay? All right? And some of us are more gifted in this area than others. On the next page, on page 156, some things about the mercy shower. If you are a mercy shower, down at the bottom of the page, you have a spirit-given capacity and desire to serve God by identifying with and comforting those in distress. You are the person who understands and comforts fellow Christians. Some of the characteristics on the top of the next page, they're usually soft-spoken person. They're often outgoing with a low-key, inoffensive personality. They're able to express themselves easily. They appear to be always loving. They're usually good-natured and well-liked by others. They're responsive to people. They're a good listener. Number 9, they're peaceable and agreeable. They don't overpower others. So if these resonate with you, so, you know, that describes me quite a bit. It may be you're a mercy shower. The mercy shower has a burden to comfort others. They are sympathetic and sensitive.
Sorry. It was a great description of Kim, and I was like, that's not me.
She's sitting here with a look on her face and was like, nope.
The more you go, the more I'm like, no.
It doesn't describe all of us. That is true. It's like
Definitely.
saying to the child, get up off the ground. You're not bleeding. You
The
know,
weight of your
right?
sins had me get up.
Oh, yeah. They tend to have they like to fellowship with other sympathetic people. So, Kim, if you feel like moving to another table, I understand. Okay.
She won't do that. She has an inoffensive personality.
Right. They tend to attract people who are hurting or rejoicing. They're non-condemning, not a griper, except when they're with other mercy showers. Then they tend to gripe between themselves. They identify emotionally and mentally with others. They are patient, sincere, responsive, and tolerant. They can become insecure, withdrawn, or remote. Some of their needs and weaknesses, they tend to make poor counselors without added discipline because they will try and fix the problem themselves. That's the reason. They often will resent others who are not as understanding as they are. They're not usually logical, they're often more emotional. They often let other people use them. They don't know how to set up boundaries. They do well when they are partnered up with somebody who knows how to set boundaries. That's one of their strengths. They can be indecisive. They can become a gossiper, especially around other mercy showers. They can be depressed easily. They can be controlled by circumstances. On page 158, they are often misunderstood by others. Others look at the mercy shower and may think they're weak. They may think they're a compromiser. They may think they take up for people. They're a softie. They're too emotional. How does Satan attack the gift? It can cause pride, people just don't understand others' burdens as well as I do. I'm better at it. You know, they get pride. It can cause disregard for rules and authority. How does this come to play? If there are guidelines set up in an organization that says, especially in a ministry or perhaps in a social situation where people come for help, and they say if someone's coming for help, they must meet these guidelines, the mercy shower will bypass the guidelines. All right. because the need is so great. They can attack the gift by having a lack of discipline because of their strong feelings for those who are hurting. Can cause them to complain or gripe. Many places this gift is well used: in a hospital, nursing home, or shut-in worker, a funeral coordinator, at a poverty center worker, an usher, greeter, welcome center, media worker for shut-ins, hospitality, telephone center worker, member of a newcomer team.
I like how it says as a poverty center worker, if properly disciplined.
Right, it's talking about the understanding the boundaries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what that's talking about, okay? They're often, you find them as nurses. There are those there's a reason why there's the stereotype of the nurse ratchet. It's because that is so out of the norm of most nurses, right? It's so out of the norm that they created a name for the obnoxious nurse called the nurse ratchet, okay? Most nurses fall in that mercy shower category.
Nurse ratchet.
It's an old one.
It's from a book.
It's for, yeah.
It's from a book.
I can't remember the book, but it's an old one.
I know.
I knew what
Sounds
it
like
was.
some
Yeah.
like Debbie Downer, like kind of like, oh, why did it here? Oh,
No, it's more like a very
She's
mean,
wicked and malevolent.
Oh.
mean nurse.
Damaged
Okay.
people that
Yeah,
have been
mean nurse.
controlled in a.
All right,
Yeah.
so lots of places so the kinds of places that they thrive are in those helps ministries.
Ratchet.
Okay? All right, so because man had a need for comfort, God gave to the church people with the gift of mercy. If you identify with a lot that's in this section, that may be one of your spiritual gifts. Okay? All right. The mercy shower. It's the spiritual given capacity and desire to serve God by identifying with and comforting those who are in need. I remember Pastor Adams used to say that his ministry was not to comfort the afflicted, it was to afflict the comfortable. He was not that mercy showing was not his number one gift. It was evangelism.
He had to like it, kind of.
All right,
He had
so-
to be like the.
Then, because man had a need for a helping hand, God gave to the church the servant, the gift of serving. So that's chapter 15, page 159. The word for that we get our word deacon from comes from the Greek word for servant. And it is the gift of serving is a combination of helps and ministering. People with this gift tend to enjoy the manual projects. You know, they like being able to do things with their hands. Yeah, there's names that immediately come to my mind as well. People who this is, you know, when you mention a need, they say, how can my tools help? Right? That's what they want to do. These are the ones who will paint the walls, pick up the trash, sort the hymnals, clean the baptistry, keep the nursery, bake the cakes, cook the meals, paint the signs, drive the bus, and 1,000,001 other necessary tasks in the church.
Mm-hmm.
They can always be found late in the evening doing some seemingly small job, like fixing the public address speaker that didn't work last Sunday. All right, these are the servants, and they usually don't like to be called out or noticed. Right? These are the ones who their ministry is best when nobody knows about it. That's what it's behind the scenes.
Doing things for others and expect nothing in return.
And well, more than that, they don't even want to be noticed
Yeah.
for it. They just want it to be done. Okay? On page 160, there's some illustrations of some people who were the servers in the New Testament. I like the way they talk about Tabitha, also known as Dorcas. She used her talent of sewing in the gift of serving. When she died, God used Peter to raise her up from the dead. Now, there are some people who think, well, you know, the gift of serving is not that important. The preacher is the most important. Well, you know what? When Peter died, no one raised him from the dead.
That's funny.
But God thought it was important enough to raise Tabitha. Yeah.
HB on my space is Hollerboy, and Hollerboy is doing things for others and expect nothing in return. And so that kind of reminds me, like, get to serving, and so that kind of reminds me how I got tattooed on my face.
Well, the point being that, you know, if we were the ones who were deciding
Yeah.
who's the most important one, oh no, the great preacher died, he needs to be resurrected, we're not ready to lose him.
Right.
But God, in God's economy, was saying, you know what, this church needs Tabitha, the servant. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Some things about the server. If you are a server, you have a spirit-given capacity and desire to serve God by rendering practical help in both physical and spiritual matters. You are the person who meets the practical needs of fellow Christians and the church. Their catchphrases, they're anything I can help you with.
Right.
You know, that's just the way they are. And boy, I am so thankful that we have in our church many people with a servant's heart. Now, having a servant's heart is a grace we're supposed to all develop.
Right.
I am not naturally the servant, but I'm working at developing that grace, where I intentionally find myself asking when I make visits, especially in the hospitals, is there anything I can help you with? I do it on purpose. I'll tell you, it's not because it's natural, it's because it's a grace I'm trying to grow, all right? Because I don't learn about the need unless I ask, you know, and it would really bother me sometimes when I'd go make a hospital visit and I'd come back to the office to give a report or something, and then our church secretary at the time, she would say, so were you able to help her with this and that and the other? I didn't even know about that. Oh, I was talking to her on the phone and I asked her. Now don't I feel like the fool? I could have helped her, but I didn't know because I didn't think to ask.
Yeah.
Right? Because at that time, the secretary we had, her spiritual gift was that of serving. And so that was an automatic for me. So I learned from her. Miss Susan was so good at that. I learned from her to ask the questions so I could learn to grow in that grace in something that was natural for her. The person who that is natural for probably has the gift of serving. Okay? They, number 3 on the list, they generally enjoy manual projects. And I have something that I'm facing automotively that I've been dreading. I've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And my wife keeps saying, we need to get this taken care of. I know we do. When I look at the YouTube videos,
What is
I
it?
could do it, but I don't want to. I keep putting it off. And so finally I decided, you know what? I know somebody who could help. And I just sort of floated it and I said, hey, yeah, I can handle that, no problem. It's like, whew, I just felt the weight come off of me. Because I know if I tackle the job, if the YouTube video says 45 minutes, it's going to take me anywhere between half a day and a full day. I know that. Because I'm not a mechanic. I can copy what somebody else has done, but I'm not intuitive, right? But somebody who likes hands-on things, they're not even interested in looking at the YouTube video. You know, they're going to say, no, it's going to be right there. Yeah, no, I'll get this. No, that doesn't work. I'll grab that. There it is. That'll work. And I just stand there and I'm amazed.
What is it?
Doesn't matter. The point is not.
I want to know.
The point's the illustration.
Oh.
Okay. It's an O2 sensor. Right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's not something I want to tackle. All right. It's
Right in the back.
It's beyond what I want to do.
Right.
Okay. There's something, I don't mind changing the oil, but I'm grateful right now that I can actually get my oil changed cheaper than I could do it myself. So why do it myself, right? And I'm glad for that today. But there's something I just don't want to tackle. And I have people in my life who like that kind of stuff, and it boggles the mind. The server is generally loyal, sincere, tolerant, faithful, and devoted. They're usually easygoing, likable, congenial, inoffensive. Number 9, they're usually inhibited publicly, not often expressive. Number 11, they're usually good with mechanical work. Some of their burdens, they're burdened with other people's needs. They quickly respond to the needs of others. They're impressed with the need to respond when they're exhorted to serve. They are usually unable to say no. Now, this is one of the areas where spiritual maturity comes into play, because they can overextend themselves, and they have to learn how to do boundaries. And sometimes they would never learn it if they didn't have a wife who helped them, who would say, don't forget you have a family, right? they have to have some of that to draw them back in, okay? They enjoy doing mechanical or hands-on jobs in the church, okay? One of the special needs, the server often will emphasize practical needs over spiritual needs, so that can be dangerous. They sometimes, number 11, can be controlled more by circumstances than principles. Oftentimes, they are only satisfied if they've done more for you than you've done for them. There are some people like that. I like the phrase of 14. They are a master of decisive indecision. You know, do you know somebody? No, not all servers are like that, but some are. That they analyze so much that they can't make the final decision. They've got to, you know, because of the way I'm gifted as an administrator, I think of doing things in 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have to take a breath and wait when I'm listening to a server to hear the whole story about why they're thinking about maybe doing, well, not 1, but 2, maybe come number 1. And by the time they described all of that about maybe thinking about 2 becoming 1, I would have already had the list of 10 and assigned it to 5 people. You know, and so I have to take a breath and listen, because this is important to the server to be able to go through that process. And if you know somebody who has that gift, you understand. The story is as important to them as doing the work is. So you gotta let them do it, you know. We have one of our children with this gift when they were younger. We learned with them to do this idea of brackets. You know, in writing, you have a parenthesis of opening and closing brackets. Sometimes when you go into the story and there's not even a place to take a breath, you know, I look at them and I go, bracket. You know, like there's a place that has to have a beginning and an end. Somewhere we've done the beginning, now we need the end.
Yeah.
And we had to do that, or else we'd still be waiting on the story to finish. Okay. On page 162, how the server is misunderstood, what other people think about them. Sometimes they think they're pushy, doing things without asking. They just, you know, they just see the need and just start doing it, not realizing they might be stepping in somebody else's territory or somebody else's job. There may be a reason why we haven't addressed that need. It could be something I know that they don't, right? There may be a reason why we haven't done this particular thing. Sometimes the server thinks that other people think the server is excluding them from something that's their responsibility. Sometimes others will think the server is impatient and jumps in too fast, even perhaps interfering with the Spirit's work. Did you know that there are times when God is working in somebody's life and they're going to allow them to have financial difficulties for them to feel the pain of their bad decision, because that's the only way they learn? What? And then the server comes along and says, oh, let me help fix your problem, and now the lesson's lost. What God was trying to teach them, they didn't learn because server came in and fixed it. So now God says, okay, I gotta let something else bad happen to you because server fixed the problem when I didn't tell him to.
This was my second one on the list.
So time ties it often with mercy shower too. These two gifts are often very closely tied. It's important sometimes that we understand God may, you know, there's, in the Bible talks about chastisement. Sometimes we can get in the way of God's chastisement of somebody. That's why in the church environment, we often will tell people, hey, listen, if somebody shares a burden with you, first of all, thank God that you were approached enough they felt safe to do that. Because some of us have a disposition where they're afraid to say anything. If somebody feels comfortable enough that they can share a burden with you, that's a blessing. But before you commit or respond, one of the things I would tell people you should always do is say, number one, let me pray for you, and pray with them right then. And then number two, let me get back with you to see if there's something we can do to help. Now, you may have in your pocket that day, God gave you $100 and you didn't know what you're supposed to do with it. And someone has a need in the church and you're saying, this is it, I need to give this money to them. This is what, don't just act on that impulse. The servant will often do that. Keep that to yourself. You hear the need, express sympathy for it, pray with them about it, and then go talk to a pastor. Because guess what? The pastor may know something you don't know. We may understand that the person asking you for this need to be met, there's a reason the need is there, and it's because they gambled their paycheck last night. So what they need today is to live in the discomfort, or the want or the deprivation that is the fruit of what they did. There may be a chastisement factor, and if you come in and rescue them, then they walk away thinking, hey, it's going to be okay. I don't have to be responsible because other people will fix it. And so they don't learn the lesson God was trying to teach. So the person who has a servant's heart has to be careful in this matter of interfering with maybe something God's trying to do in somebody else's life. So you just have to be careful.
Yeah.
Now, it may be that the pastor will say, you know, if God's put it in your heart to help them, that's awesome. Thank you for being willing. Go for it. That happens too, okay? But just be aware of that. That is a weakness that can happen. Sometimes Satan can attack the gift because it can cause pride in the work they've done. Or maybe make them feel like they're insignificant because they're not in front of people the way others are. So some of those kind of things. Number 5, some will feel like because I don't have the workmanship level of somebody else or the lack of knowledge or skills of somebody else, I can't be used by God. Because I want to do something, but I'm not as skilled as somebody else. So be aware of those things can be a danger. Satan can attack us because of that. All right. How can they be used, this gift? A person in charge of maintenance and grounds, as a baptismal helper, as a nursery, kitchen, or choir helper. There's lots of areas where the gift can be used. All right, number 16, page 163, the giver. Again, this is an area where God has for all of us, wants us to grow in this grace, in the grace of giving. We all need to grow in the grace of giving. Everyone does. And I think my battery died on my pad. Sorry about that. So I won't be able to use the...
No signal.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's see here. Let me have something at the very end I want us to be able to do here. So let me see if I got the right kind of... I don't know if I have the right kind of outlet for this.
Is it a lightning or USB-C?
Yeah, I just want to recharge my pad, but
What's
I
the-
can't. I'm not going to be able to recharge it, I guess.
What's the cable? I might have one.
No, this needs it's not just your standard one of these. It's a different. That's okay. Never mind. All right. I'll show it to you on my phone when we're done. Okay. Number 16, the giver. Givers again.
I think you can screenshot it onto the screen for your phone.
The givers feel the best way they can give of themselves is to give of their material gain for the work of God. They feel that since God gave them the ability to make money, they should use it to give it back to God in His work. Here's the important statement. While everyone should tithe, the giver goes far beyond the tithe, right? So someone who has the gift of giving is different than all of us who should grow in the grace of giving. This past week, I was in a situation where I was praying and I was saying, God, you know what our budget is, you know what our needs are. Lord, there's something I want to be able to give for. and I don't have money to give. And I prayed and said, God, would you give me a resource so I can give? And I had in my mind a dollar amount of something. And the Lord abundantly blessed the next day with double of what I was praying about. And you know what? This shows that my spiritual gift is not giving. Because my immediate thought was, oh cool, I can give what I was thinking about and I have some extra money. And then, out of my first thought, I can still give what I was praying about and the rest is mine. And as quick as I thought it, I said, wait a minute. I asked God to give me so I could give. He's giving me, he's trusting me. If I don't give all of this, I'm telling God, you can't trust me. Right? Because I specifically prayed, Lord, outside of my income, I don't have extra my income. If you will give me extra money, I will give it for this purpose. But in my mind, I was thinking, it'll probably be this or that. I had in my mind sort of a dollar figure that would be reasonable for me to ask God to give. And he gave me double of that the next day. And I began negotiating in my mind. God, I'll give you what I was thinking about, but the rest is mine. No. I think God wanted to see, can I trust him? He gave me extra to see what I'd do with it. So I gave it all, right? That's something I've had to learn how to do. The grace of giving. Sean, you've got a puzzled look on your face. I'm not talking about your bills. I'm not talking
saying
about...
like if you ask for a certain amount of money.
I did not ask for a specific amount. I said, God, if you will give me some extra money,
right,
I want to give for this purpose. I want to give it to you.
And he gave you.
And then in my mind, I was thinking, I'm sure God would probably give me this amount or this amount, And he gave me double. And so I began negotiating with him. Oh, cool. I can get what I was thinking about, and I have all this money to spend on me. That's not why God gave it to me. He didn't give it to me for me to have bonus money to spend on myself. That's the point. Now, the person who has the gift of giving, that thought process, that little argument within himself would have never happened. The person with the gift of giving would have said, awesome, now I can give more. And ask God to give me more to give more. And ask God to give me more to give more. It's a different process. I have to learn to grow in the grace of giving because I have a heart for God. But the person with the gift of giving, they'll give away, as the author actually talks about, they'll give away that whole school bill payment and then wonder why they can't pay their school bill. Or they'll give away their entire check and then they can't pay the rent. So they've got to be careful with that. It does have to be under control. Now, it's a couple of things, and I'm getting ahead of the description, but there on 163, it talks about givers will look with disapproval on the person who gives for the wrong motive, such as giving to get. The televangelist gets up and talks about, give and you'll get, give and you'll get, give and you'll get. Do you need $10,000? Give God 1,000. He'll give it to you tenfold, hundredfold. No, and the person with the heart of giving, they recognize the foolishness of that, right? So no, I give because I can't help not give. That's their mentality. There's no way I can not give. Okay, the good comparison given for us in Acts 4 and 5, the Barabbas had a heart for ministry, had a heart for Christ and for the church. He sold his property, gave the funds to the church, and then left for the mission field, right? Ananias and Sapphira saw the praise that happened when Barnabas gave. And they began thinking to themselves, we're selling this piece of property. We could give a generous offering to the church. And then people will rejoice like they did with Barnabas. But then somehow, as Peter puts it, Satan put it in their heart They decided they wanted the same level of praise Barnabas got. So they let the church believe they were giving all the money, when really they were only giving part, and then they were going to spend the rest on Caribbean probably haven't been discovered yet, a Mediterranean cruise, let's say, all right? They decide for whatever reason to hold back some of the money for themselves, but let the church think they were giving it all. And Peter, in the power of the Holy Spirit, identified their lie, understood their heart, and God killed them for the lie. All right? Had nothing to do with the amount of the offering, had everything to do with the heart. They were giving for the approval of men and were lying about it. Right? And with that, what a warning was given for that. In the middle 164, there must be a distinction made between the gift of giving and the grace of giving. Tithing and giving are responsibilities of every Christian. The tithe is the first fruit of our increase. It is God's. We should give it to Him. Luke 6:38 is for every Christian, not just those with the gift of giving. That is the grace of giving. Giving from a heart of love, allowing God to furnish the returns that we have given Him from a desire to help others and further His work. But the person who has the gift of giving will just give and only think about those things. All right. There are 4 guidelines on the top 165. The giver should have learned to observe 4 guidelines. 1, do not love riches. Number 2, give for the right reason. Number 3, make sure you make giving your reason for gaining wealth. So if you are pursuing wealth, it should be only so you can give, not so you can increase your lifestyle. And keeping your spiritual life strong and consistent with God. If you are a giver, you have the Spirit-given capacity and desire to serve God by giving of your material resources far beyond the tithe to further the work of God. You are the person who meets the financial needs of fellow Christians and church members. The giver is usually well organized. They usually keep to themselves. They want their gifts to be private, not publicized. Under their burdens, they're sensitive to the financial and material needs of others. They are alert to needs others might overlook. They are always ready to give. They want their gifts to be of high quality. On the top of the next page, number 7, they usually have a burden for missions. Some of their needs and weaknesses, they may measure other people's spirituality by the amount of their giving. They may judge their success by the amount of their material assets. They may think God has called everyone to give the way they do, and they don't understand why they ignore the calling. They usually give more to projects than to individuals. How are they misunderstood? Others think the giver is trying to control them with their money, or they are condemning them because they don't give as much as they do. Or because they don't have as much as they do, or that maybe they are materialistic because of their emphasis on money, or that they're trying to buy their position in the church. Okay? Satan can attack the gift by causing pride in the amount of their gift, and they can cause blindness to spiritual needs and qualities. The person with the gift of giving does not worry about recognition. They just want to help. That's just where it comes down to. They're often the ones who think, well, no matter what the problem is, I could write a check and it'll fix it. You know, and many of them actually become successful in business, not so they can improve their lifestyle, but because it gives them an avenue to give. Yeah.
I think I've told you this before. Bolthouse Farms, there was a man, Mr. Bolthouse, who owned it.
Right.
And when he owned it, when the company became successful, sorry, he's the best example of giver that I know. When the company became successful, he committed to living off of a smaller amount. And as he continued to grow wealth, he was very generous towards missions. And when he sold Bolthouse Farms, like the company, to Kraft, from the sale, they put a significant amount of money into a trust for missions. And for a long time, that's how Brazil, you could apply and have missions money to fund your buildings, and now it's worldwide. And when I think of a giver, I think of Mr. Bolthouse.
Right.
I got to meet him when I was a very old man, and he had like suckers for kids just in his pocket, like, yeah, he was a giver.
Good. All right, and then number 17, the administrator.
That's my number one gift, weirdly.
Okay, number 167. Now, sometimes when we see the titles of the gift, we associate them with a position. And so that's one thing we gotta be careful about. So for example, the word pastor is the same word from the word shepherd.
Mhm.
Not everyone who has the gift of shepherding is a pastor, right? Not everyone who has gifts of administration is a leader in a leadership position. But it is a gifted that if given, put in a group of people, the person with administrative skills will rise in that group to be one of the leaders. One of my children, growing up, we talked, my wife and I would refer to him as the reluctant leader. Because he didn't like being in front of people, but anytime he was in a group, they ended up doing what he wanted to do. He was a reluctant leader, right? He wanted to stay back and let someone else make all the noise, but then he would, by his influence, the group would follow him. That's
Yeah.
what it was. So what is a leader, an administrator? The administrator is a leader. They are usually take charge people who will jump in and start giving orders when no one else is in charge. All right? They'll put a plan on paper and start delegating responsibility. Usually they have one of two leadership styles. One is to organize things, events, or programs. The other is to organize people and emphasize personal relationships and leadership responsibilities. On page number 168, one of the things they need to learn is the principle of 1 Corinthians 11:1. Be you followers of me as I am of Christ. All right. Many times the administrator has to be careful not to be a do as I say, not as I do person. They will be most effective when they say follow me as I follow Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They're a person who is gifted with administration, but whose life is in chaos, is going to be a very frustrated person, because people are not going to follow if your life is a mess. Right? Okay. The point is, God has always had his leaders. Bottom 168. Was the Israelites had left Egypt if they hadn't had Moses? Would they have conquered the promised land without Joshua? Would they have survived without Esther? In the story of Esther, her uncle Mordecai actually said, if you do not stand, God will bring deliverance by somebody else.
Right.
But the reason her name is given is she took the lead.
If you can't do it, somebody else will.
That's the point. So God has put on this earth in his church men and women with the gift of administration to be leaders. That's why he gives them. Some of their characteristics in the 169 about the administrator. The administrator has a spirit-given capacity and desire to serve God by organizing, administering, promoting, and leading the various affairs of the church. Their characteristics, they're a person with a dream, they're goal-oriented, they're well-disciplined, they usually work best under heavy pressure. So I have really tried, as I've grown and matured in ministry, to be more disciplined on how I do my message preparation. But can I tell you, the first 10 years I was in ministry, I usually was up late Saturday night and up super early Sunday morning doing message preparation. Right? I was. I mean, it was like the pressure of the deadline. That's when the writing would just flow. But you know what? That even happened when I was in school. The very best papers I ever wrote were written the night before they were due. Fact. The ones where they forced me to do all the research stuff and do all the court cards, those were the most boring papers. And they would write on unimaginative, you know. Those are the kind of comments that would be on there. Robotic. And they say, yeah, I agree. Let me do it the way I like to do it. It's due Friday, I'll do it at midnight Thursday, and you'll like the paper. Right? So Now, as I've gotten older and have matured in some other areas, I've learned to be more disciplined, and I don't usually wait to the deadline to start a project, right? But that took time. That wasn't normal. I thrived under the deadline. Okay? And so there are, the person who is gifted in administration usually thrives under the deadline. All right? On the top of 170, they generally dream big dreams for God. They delegate wherever possible, number 3, but they also know when not to. They can't bear defeat. They have a strong desire to win. Number 5, they can harmonize the various affairs of the church. You know how to balance them together. They're capable of making quick decisions and sticking to them. They will assume leadership when there is no leader in a group. They're usually skilled in planning. They make decisions logically, strictly on facts, and not on feelings. 12, they're usually very competitive by nature. There's some people this really describes in our life, yeah. Some of their needs, number 1, they appear on the outside to be organized, but usually aren't. They look at the overall picture, but they miss smaller details. One of the dangers is they can make decisions based on logic rather than scripture. They don't like to admit to making mistakes or to weaknesses. Number 7, they're often not good at remembering names. How are they misunderstood? Others may think the administrator is cold, pushy. Number 4, not concerned with people, doesn't have time for others, is selfish and trying to be a big shot, maybe bossy and impatient. How can Satan attack the gift? They can cause pride because of the leadership role, cause selfishness because of success, cause blame shifting when things go wrong, cause discouragement when goals aren't met, cause anger with those who disagree, cause wrong motives, can cause lack of concern, can cause a lack of spiritual growth. All right, that's the administrator. All right, so I know we had you take the spiritual gifts assessment at the beginning. Thinking about these gifts and maybe looking at them again, I'd encourage you to take it a second time and then compare and see if your assessment has altered now that you understand the gifts a little more. And remember, as you take the assessment, that the point is not to answer the way you quote should as a spiritual Christian. Like if there's a question in there that's geared towards the giver, it may say something along the line of, I believe the greatest need for the church in dealing with the homeless is providing them food and a place to stay. And you say, yeah, you're right, that is. Oh, I better mark that high. If you are not a giver, that's not really your heart. That's your logic saying we should think that.
Need a job before
Your heart is saying that guy needs to get off his duff and go get a job.
Yeah.
Right? So answer the question honestly with how you feel, not the way you think a spiritual person should answer. All right, so that's the point of the assessment. So the way you truly feel, not the way you think you should answer. Okay? So that's important. If you'll do it that way, it'll help define the gifts a little more effectively. Then the other thing, and I'm sorry my pad died, I have a QR code I wanted to have for you. I don't know that I can access it on my phone because let's see, I don't think I've got access to the cloud drive the pad is connected to. I don't. Okay, I have an assessment. Let's do this. We'll pause for just a second. Let me go grab my power cord so I can plug this thing in. I'll bring it up so you can do it. I was supposed to give you a test. Well, I'm doing a self-assessment, and I've got a QR code for you to scan on your phone, and it'll just take like 3-4 minutes. Right? I'll be right back. Let me go grab that power cord.
3 or 4 minutes time.
Sean's a riot. I've never met him before.
Yeah, him and, I think him and Scott and Lorraine, and they all like came up together through the church.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're all kids together. Stephen Everest, there's like a bunch of pictures that I have of them when they were young. Yeah. I have a funny for you, Miss Joan.
Yeah.
So I'm out there at the piano, I'm playing a song, and I'm like, this is a Did you hear that? When it switched to Christmas?
But I heard some news.
Alright, I just grabbed the snippet, but it was, Rise of church and lift your voices, Christ has come.
Yeah.
It's Easter, and then this one's second coming is the same tune. But I'm playing, I'm like, we glorified all the earth. I was like, I gotta finish this song because everyone's gonna be like, Rich is playing Christmas in April.
That's cool. But no, you were playing something with very, it was so sparkling. And I don't know how else to describe it. I had to turn around and see, see if it was you playing or whether it was someone else that I wasn't familiar with. Yeah, it was just, there was just one song and it was like, oh,
I know. Well, what's funny was watching on Like a River Glory. I always play that song too fast for Scott, and I've been his pianist at the Brookdale for 10 years. And then his arm got real big. I was like, oh, so I had to start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then at one point, I saw his shoulders go like the big breath. I was like, okay, I must have gotten sped up again. I was like, rude.
I didn't realize tonight I wasn't gonna be able to see until I tried.
That was funny.
Yeah.
You know what? I didn't even miss a beat because you guys switched.
Yeah, I knew I had some credit going here, but as soon as I tried to sing, like,
What's funny is
nothing there.
I could hear you better than Scott on the monitor. Like, I don't know if you had the mic far away or what. I was like, what are you
All right, my pad.
Yeah, I didn't have to add any measures. They like managed to switch right on the beat. I was like, I would clap for you, but I didn't play.
Have you taken spiritual gift tests as a younger man?
I have.
And
They
have
have
you
changed.
found that your gifts have changed
Well,
over decades?
not the dominant one. I talked about this in one of our other lessons. Yes, I pulled out one of my early ones,
Mhm.
and while I've always been really high in administration, what I had previously, administration and shepherd were way up here, and then everything else was down here. It's like, 3, 4, 5 on the scale, 12, 13, 14 on the scale for the 2 top ones, and everything was like nothing else. I was like one dimension.
Yeah.
But as I've grown and matured in Christ and intentionally worked on some of these graces on purpose, the other numbers have come up. Now, number 1 and 2 are still dominant, but you'll see many of the other ones, it's more even in the 8, 9, 10s.
Yeah.
So it's very unusual for the number 1 to drop unless it's maybe switching with the 2, and that probably has more to do with the assessment than it was the actual giftedness. It probably either your number 1 gift was not what you thought it was, or the way you read the test. But it's still going to remain up there at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, most generally. You don't generally, because it's a gift God gives you at salvation. So there's a primary gift He gives to you for the work of the ministry, and then there's other things we're supposed to grow in grace in. Okay, my pad, the PowerPoint open here, and I'll get to the QR code. Won't be able to project it because I've got it plugged in, but that's okay. We'll still get it to go. Oh, wait, I've got the other one, maybe this one. We'll try. Yeah, mine. I'm not trying to,
Yeah, because the question is how much power.
whether we'll do both or not, we'll find out. See if it connects and says it likes it.
Isn't that the struggle? Like, not just like being able to plug something in, but for the thing to cooperate.
Yeah.
Hey, we have mountains.
Hey, looky there. Looks like it is going.
Well, we have rocks and plateaus.
All right.
Not sure how much.
All right. There it is. There's the slide I need. Slideshow. All right, so we got it. All right, here we go. So, if you want to, as soon as it's finished popping up, we have a short little assessment. It's still thinking, I was trying to get the whole thing, the QR code's right. It's like a 10-question self-assessment. You want to grab that, you can do that and go answer it real quick.
What do you say predominant, like the very first one? With the top?
Yeah, if, I'm trying to remember, it may actually have given you the opportunity to do one or two, I don't remember now.
It's key for the GPCC, right?
Yeah, GPBCC. Oh man, I don't remember. The problem is I had 5 like super close together. Let's see if I have
Is this the same QR code?
Yeah,
Okay.
there we go. So, yeah, so just go down, there's a button on there for self-assessment questionnaire. So if you wanna go and take that, quick little questionnaire, and
And
once
you're
we're
talking
done with
about the
that.
group edition or the individual edition?
Oh, you should have, that QR code should have taken you to this page on our website.
Only thing, one thing to click on, right?
Yeah, then there's a self-assessment questionnaire, right?
Okay, here, yeah,
Okay, and then on there,
Yeah, and then you
then
should
that'll take you to
fill it
the
out.
questions to fill out.
okay.
Yeah. So, the top is saying if you've not taken the assessment yet, you could go take it. That's what that top link
That's
was.
right, yeah.